Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? Oh, my hair looks crazy. Let me take this down and show you why it's all poking out the back, okay? Because I got pigtails on. It looks weird though when it's just like that. It looks like I got horns or something coming out of the back of my head. How are you guys doing? It's been a hectic day for me. Let me get properly caffeinated. And yes, I do have the Patreon stuff up because I haven't been a very good grifter. So I'm going to grift fucking, oops, I cursed in the first 5 minutes. That means this video will definitely get demonetized. So, means I got to grift even harder. I need to make up the normal beginning of the month attrition of patrons because it happens. People's lives circumstances change. I think that was somehow grammatically incorrect. But if you could become a patron, I would super appreciate it. I have a $20, I think it's 20, it might be 25, shortfall of monthly donors to try to make up before I could even think about any new goals for October. If you could do that, and there's a fly flying around here, so if you just see me go like that, did I get it? I think I got it. I'm good. Killer of flies, breaker of chains, herder of butts. Karen Ann, first of her name. Okay, yes, if you... Crap, what was that? So if you could do that, I would super, super appreciate it. And also, tonight, any night, but tonight, since this will be a somewhat long stream, hopefully, well, probably, depends on your comments, and this better be participatory, as I like it, because I am so tired of hearing myself talk. And I'm sure there's 11 people out there who are really tired of hearing me talk too. Some of you will get that reference. Super chats, please, and participatory. Also, we did get in the new, did I delete that picture? I don't know if I deleted that picture. Let me see here. I did not. If you want I know it's backwards because I forgot to flip it. Say decorum one more time, I dare you t-shirt modeled by the lovely CJ Abernathy, who just looks wonderful in pink. It's very masculine, CJ. Just so you know, you look fantastic in pink, and it is the man shirt, not the lady shirt that I was modeling the other day. Then I would really super appreciate you getting a t-shirt, and you can get this link here. Oh, I didn't take down this. There we go. I need a board operator, which I will have tomorrow when I do my radio show. First show is tomorrow. We'll talk about that in between. I don't want to bore you. I don't want to front load this with too much comments. So if you would like one of those shirts, right there. I hope to see a lot of them. Yeah, Dave, I should play that clip. I hope to see a lot of them at convention and at national convention, at state conventions. That's what I'm trying to say. I get so distracted by comments, and other people don't know what I'm talking about. Here I am, just definitely need a board operator. So my comments are off to the side here, so it's like I get so distracted, people don't know who I'm referring to. It's the live chat. If you're watching this with live chat on, then you understand who and what I'm referring to. If you're not, then you are super confused. This is a supplement to the show I already did on Delaware. Hi, I'm in Delaware. Then we probably should play that. That would be a great kickoff. Then I'm going to put it up here. I can never remember what side YouTube has you put on the cards, but I will put a show card so that you guys can, I'm trying to pull something up here, so I'm doing filler. Can watch the prior show I did on this, because I really, only one thing have I changed my opinion on. But let's, why not? Let's do this. Let me pull this up here. And here we go. Why not? We'll start out the show with this in tribute to Delaware. Why the heck not?
Welcome to Wayne's World. Party on, Garth.
Party on, Wayne.
Okay, we got a new feature on Wayne's World this week, which allows us to travel through time and space. It's called Chroma Key, and it's really handy if you want to go to New York. Hey, we're in New York.
I got a gun. Let's get to a Broadway show.
I guess kids get this? Oh, they love it.
Yo, taxi. Or maybe you prefer Hawaii. Mukalakahiki. Come on, you want to lay me? Pass the poi, mahalo.
Or say you want to go to Texas. Howdy, partners. Let's raise and rope broncos.
Let's go down to the floor.
Howdy, y'all.
Or imagine being able to be magically whisked away to Delaware. Hi, I'm in Delaware.
Sorry. I just love that. And the whole time I was in Delaware, we were just walking around going, hey, I'm in Delaware. Oh, I need to put that down. That was a stay sealer. Okay. So that kicks us off. And a lot has happened. Not really has happened in Delaware. A lot has happened in my understanding of what happened in Delaware. And we'll recap where we're at. But I wanted to say one thing that was a change from the opinion in my prior video. The opinion I came into this whole thing with was, just on a cursory look at what happened, was that it was a very, very dirty trick, that it was probably procedurally legal, but morally unethical. As we know, there are plenty of things that are procedurally legal and morally unethical. I can think of one recent one, like, say, not telling a regional representative who's going home because his wife's having a baby and you're the regional sneaking in behind his back. Yeah, that's very unethical. I hope you're proud of yourself, David Sexton, and the rest of the LNC who had to win by cheating in an unethical way. But it was legal. Some people dispute that, though, and I've seen some interesting arguments as to why. I've seen some interesting arguments put out by the Florida XCOM as to why it wasn't legal. I leave that for that region to deal with. It looks to me like it was legal, but that doesn't make it right. We all know, as libertarians, a lot of things are legal in the law, not talking about procedure, but are unethical. And unlike Aaron Adams, I don't think we're required to follow unethical laws or unethical bylaws either, for that matter. Fortunately, I don't think any of our bylaws are unethical, but if they were, we'd be duty-bound as libertarians to disobey them. But there aren't any unethical bylaws that we have. They would get weeded out in convention. But say something slipped through, we'd be duty-bound to disobey. I disagree with Ms. Adams there. I don't think that you compromise your ethics because something's written on a piece of paper. That's just me. Either that, or if you actually, you know, I probably would revise my opinion on that, because we're in a very fortunate position that I don't think there's anything unethical in our bylaws. But I think if there was something unethical in our bylaws and I was being called to enforce something unethical, I'd probably just resign. I'd have to see the specific situation. It would depend upon who the potential victim was. If resigning would cause a victim to get victimized, I probably wouldn't. But it'd be very situation specific. But one thing I would not do is enforce an unethical bylaw, law, or anything else that was unethical. Just wouldn't do it. I differ from most of the LNC in that way, I think. Ooh, my anarchy symbol is all twisted up. Hold on. I need to get it out of disarray. Oh my God. Don't want anarchy in disarray. That would be horrible. Okay. Sorry. Not sorry. So that was sorry, off on the rant there. Not sorry. That's kind of on my mind, I would think, for obvious reasons. So that was my initial conclusion, was that it was probably procedurally correct, but morally unethical, in which case you should not have done it. However, I'm going to give you my conclusion now. So it's going to be a why done it rather than a who done it, and tell you the conclusion I've come to. It was not only morally unethical. In fact, it's even more unethical than I thought it was. Because I think when you add to it procedurally illegal, you add another layer of unethicalness. Because at least when you're unethical, but you followed the rules, you kind of can provide some cover for yourself by saying, but I followed the rules. The rules were not even followed. Now, to be fair, I don't even know how to refer to the parties. Okay, well, I know how to refer to them because my conclusion will tell you how to refer to them. I do not believe that Mr. McVeigh is the legitimate chair, and I do not believe that anyone on that board that's recognizing him as the legitimate chair is the legitimate board at this time. The legitimate chair is the chair that was elected at convention. And if one of those members is also a member of the other board, then they might be on two boards, both an illegitimate one and a legitimate one, if you know what I mean. Because Will McVeigh's a legitimate board member. He's on the right board with the right chair, if that makes sense. So now that I made that clear, that I'm not saying Mr. McVeigh is not a board member. He is. He's just not the chair. But for shorthand, I'm going to call him the legitimate board and the illegitimate board, just for shorthand. So we don't have to refer to all these names. So that's where we're at. And I've also, and I'll defend this at the end, but I expect some pushback. And on this opinion, perhaps my mind could be changed. My mind cannot be changed on the illegitimate, legitimate thing. I'm firmly made up on that. I've examined the evidence. On another conclusion I come to, that I do think that there actually is cause for the LNC to step in a limited manner, which is something I rarely say. On that point, I might be dissuaded, because that is like inviting a vampire into your house. When you ask the LNC to get involved in anything, that really is a double-edged sword. What the LNC giveth, the LNC taketh away. And it is indeed like inviting a vampire in your house. You never get rid of them. So it's something to be very cautious of. However, I do think there's cause here, and I'll defend that at the very end. But something I'm seeing from, and it's mostly, listen, I'm critical of everybody, and it's mostly from some Mises Caucus supporters, where it seems like some people are very eager for the LNC to get involved here, and they don't have a principled reason why, other than they agree with this side, where they thought it was wrong for the LNC to get involved in other things. And I have to ask people, be sure you have a principled argument as to why they should get involved here and not here. And it can't be just because you want them to, because it would benefit you in this circumstance. Because that's not consistent and that's not principled. You can't want the LNC to get involved only because, well, I happen to agree with this side. That's not a good reason. And I'm challenging everybody to make sure, if you're asking for LNC involvement, that you have a principled reason. And I think there's very reasonable principled reasons to be opposed to any LNC involvement. And I have a feeling some people in chat will take that principled position. But I'm going to hope you'll listen with an open mind to mine as to why not only I think they can, I think they should, and I think they should have done so yesterday. The only reason it took me till Friday to do this, I came to this conclusion yesterday, so the only reason it took me from the time I learned about it on Monday to Thursday to come to my conclusions is because I've been very caught up in my own appeal and haven't had that much time to investigate. Anyone who's had enough time to investigate, such as Region 5 Representative Susan Hogarth, who I know has been investigating, and kudos to her for that, has had more than enough time to come to a definitive solution. And I don't know, perhaps they, well, I shouldn't say I don't know. I'm sure they're discussing this in the secret list. It shouldn't be secret. This should not be discussed in the secret list. This is something that concerns all members, but I'm sure they're discussing it in the secret list. Or, because there's only two conclusions here. They're either discussing it in the secret list, or they're not discussing it at all, and I don't know what's worse. Not discussing it at all would be worse. But discussing it and keeping it secret from the members, that's par for course with this LNC. But action should have been taken already, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not on the LNC. So I don't know what other wrinkles they might have that I might not be aware of. I'll fully concede that perhaps there's something that I'm not aware of. But it's not like I don't know the LNC game. Okay, so I don't think there's anything I'm not aware of, but perhaps Susan learned something confidential that I'm not aware of. Fully concede that in full fairness. But with all the information I have, there should be assistance already. Publicly. Because this kind of shit can't be allowed to stand. It's got to be nipped in the bud. I want to bring my heater over close to me because I have to turn the furnace off and when I'm recording, and now I'm getting cold. Oh boy. Okay. So what we're going to do first is let me give just a little brief recap of what happened. This is going to be kind of scattered because it's just, all the pieces will come together at the end. But any questions, any clarifications, you guys ask me in chat and I'll stop and back up and provide clarifications. Okay? Hopefully that will help. And once again, before we get started, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. I don't remember. Oh, I need to grift. Super chats are always welcome. Won't give you priority in comments or anything because I don't do that. But they're still welcome because this is my job. This and selling my blood. No lie. That's where I was at earlier today, selling plasma, because that's how desperate I am right now to try to make some lettuce. All righty. And you have a good night as well, Julian. Okay, so where shall we start? Oh yeah, the brief summary. It's not even a brief summary. God. Watch the other video, I guess, but let me brief. We're not even going to go back 30 days ago. We're just going to go back to October 1st. Certain board members, we'll have the names in a minute because I got a screenshot, got together, voted to, but the entire board wasn't present. They got together, they voted to change their bylaws, which they're allowed to do under their bylaws, which is a terrible idea, but they're allowed to do it. They changed their bylaws in order to make it easier to remove board members. They removed board members they didn't like, and then made Will McVeigh the chair, without the board members they removed being present, and then declared themselves now the legitimate board, much to the surprise of the legitimate board. So that's the short story. I went and took a look at their bylaws, and it seemed like, okay, your bylaws suck. It did allow you to do that. That sucks. You shouldn't have. That was very unethical. But now that I've stepped back and taken a better look at their bylaws, a better look at what they actually did, and consulted the most holy writ. You guys who hate Roberts, I think you're going to learn to love it a little bit more after this show, because this thing will protect your rights. When your board won't and your bylaws suck, this will still protect your rights. So don't hate it. Embrace the bomb. Be like Dr. Strangelove. Learn how to stop worrying and embrace the cult. Accept Roberts into your heart today, my children. Can I bring you the good word of Roberts? All right, so a couple comments here. Wrist slap? Sternly worded letter? That's not action. No, I will give specific action I think the LNC can take at the end of this show. Why doesn't the remove board do the same thing to remove the new board? They could, but then we end up in a endless spiral. And that won't solve the problem because you'll still have two boards, because the first board, the illegitimate board, will refuse to recognize the legitimate board did that because they don't think they're the legitimate board. All right. Now that you got a little bit of the story. So, what did their bylaws require to change the bylaws? 30 days notice. That could be posted in one of three ways: on their website, in their Facebook social group, or in their Facebook brand page. A post was made in their Facebook social group 30 days prior to the meeting. I'm just giving you the basics. We're going to talk about the problems with that. And then the second question is, how did the board members not know about this meeting? Don't they have agendas? Like, did they not see the notice? Not talking about the notice of the bylaws amendment, the notice of meeting. Well, according to the illegitimate board, and we'll look at the bylaws. Some people may disagree here. I would love to hear the opinion of other Roberts people. Their bylaws allegedly don't require notice for meetings. All it takes is two people, somebody to make a motion, somebody to second it, for there to be a quorum there, and they could proceed on their merry way, even if the rest of the board wasn't notified of the meeting. That's their argument. If it stinks, if you smell something that smells a little like dog shit, it's because that argument is dog shit. But we'll look at it. Okay, so where we're going to start, it's more than shady. Okay, it's super shady. It gets worse though, Miss Prepper. Where we're going to start then is I took out clips from the interview, and I give him mad props that I think his name is Joe DePasquale and Will McVeigh, two of the illegitimate board members, did with The System Is Down, with Dan over at The System Is Down. I took out a few clips to let them speak in their own words. Like I do kind of with the Liberty Boudoir, we're going to play some clips and talk about it. The clips are very truncated. I'll give the context after we play it, but this will help frame the discussion. But before we do that, actually, I want to pull up the letter that remember, on Monday's show, I gave you the letter that the illegitimate board put up explaining their actions and the outright misrepresentation that's in that letter, which we might want to look at again. And also, I want to show you the letter that the legitimate board put out. So let me find these two letters. Okay, first let's put up the one that the illegitimate board put out, because I want to show you the absolute misrepresentation that's in it. Okay, let's pull this up. All right, let me make it a little bigger. Whoop, that's too big. That's not what she said. Okay, right here, the first paragraph, here's where the absolute misrepresentation is. Not the first sentence, though. Let's read the whole first paragraph and I'll let you know. At an online meeting of the LPD State Board, a change was adopted to our bylaws regarding disciplinary policy, to enable 2/3 of our county chairs. Remember, there's only 3 county chairs in Delaware. There's just 3 counties, and they are automatically board members. To remove a member of the state board, and thank you so much, Fidalgo Files, to remove a member of the state board rather than the previous 4/5 requirement amongst all state board members. So it used to be 8 out of 10 had to vote to remove. That would be 4/5 because they had a 10-member board. Board members judge that a body is poorly suited to police itself without an outside source of accountability. Let's stop right there. The county chairs are automatic board members. They are not outside sources of accountability. The way the board is comprised is you have your 4 officers and then 6 members that are 2 from each of the 3 county affiliates, with one of the 2 being the county chair and the other being a county representative. So each of the 3 county chairs are board members. So they are not an outside source of accountability. And that the 4/5 was too difficult. It was meant to be too difficult. Okay. So what they did is they took something that was difficult but said, well, you know, we're going to make it easier, but we're going to put in the safeguard of an outside source of accountability, but it's not an outside source of accountability. So what they did is, instead of 8 members being required, 8 of the 10 board members being required to remove, 2 out of the 10 board members can now remove. That is awful. There is no universe in which that is reasonable. There is no universe in which that is an outside source of accountability. None. Now, if you wanted to make it easier, you could have went with a majority. I'm not saying they should have made it easier, but just saying, you don't go from 8 to 2. Okay, John tells me, Will McVeigh said county chairs are, that's something he said. Perhaps I misunderstood him. But let's just put it this way. Carter, I thank both of you. I'm glad there's Delaware people here. But the 3 are on there now, are they not? So I have 2 Delaware people. I must have misunderstood Will. So only Newcastle County is automatically, so 1 out of 1 board member, and it's possible for the other 2 county chairs not to be board members, but they are right now, from what I understand. And John or Carter, please let me know if that's correct or not, because I obviously misunderstood something Will said, and I wish I pulled that clip out. He might have been saying shorthand that the 3 are on the board now, and I interpreted that to mean that they should be. Because if you go to the system is down, it's right in the very beginning of it. Perhaps we'll play this. He said the board is 4 officers, 3 county chairs, and then 3 county reps. Again, I probably read into that as in 3 county chairs always, rather than 3 county chairs right now. So thank you, guys. You're going to help me out here if I mess anything else up. I appreciate it. Okay, so this is just terrible, and it's not an outside source of accountability. Even if only 1 of them is on there, it's not an outside source. An outside source would be a judicial committee or a member review board or something. If even 1 of them is on the board, it's not an outside source of accountability. Okay, let's remove that. Let me go back here. Now let me pull up the letter put out by the legitimate board. And I'm going to need to make that big. So I'll do that before I put it up on the screen. Let me do all my positioning here. So because the text is so small. And we're gonna read this whole thing because we haven't yet. This came out after Monday. And let me now put it up on the screen. Okay. And let me remove me from here so we're not distracted. All right, statement by chair of the Libertarian Party of Delaware, and I do believe that this is the legitimate chair that is writing this. On October 1st, several members of the Libertarian Party of Delaware State Board attempted to orchestrate a purge of duly elected board members. No lie detected. Their actions fall far outside any proper procedural or ethical boundaries. No lie detected. When I first read this letter, I thought they were wrong about the procedure. Turns out they are correct. The members complicit in these actions have stolen financial and social media assets and are falsely using the name of this organization. Over the coming days, the mounting evidence will be released and actions will be taken to rectify the situation. I hope they are. I'm convinced by the evidence I have. I'd be glad to see even more, but I'm already convinced. But I hope legal actions are taken immediately. And like I said on Monday, that letter put out by Will, and from what I understand, that letter was not voted on by the illegitimate board, yet it has all of their, basically, their names on it. Imprimatur, oh yeah, that name, that word I always get wrong. It's slanderous. I would be really, really worried if I were anyone on that illegitimate board. That letter is awful. But let's continue. The activity in the Discord server, and let me just say here, having meetings on a Discord server is awful. I would hope you guys don't do this in the future. I know it seemed convenient in the past. That's my opinion as an outsider, for what it's worth, which is basically worth nothing because it's your party. My outside opinion. For the purpose of removing 3 members from the state board, myself, Bill Hines as the chair, Amy LaPure as the vice chair, and Dave Casey as the Newcastle County board representative. Will McVeigh, Jim Brittingham, Mary Pat McVeigh, Joe DePasquale, and Brandy Kirchhoff sought to effect these changes by ratifying a bylaw amendment to change how the state board administers disciplinary actions against board members. Isn't it funny how after the National Party weaponized disciplinary action against me, how soon the purges happened? Waterfall effect, people. This action was emboldened by the National Party. Don't let them ever forget it. This changed the method of voting from 4/5 of the full board, 10 members, to 2 out of 3 county chairs. After moving and approving this change, they immediately moved to remove myself, Dr. Lepore, and Mr. Casey from the board. All of this was done in a 5-minute span from 8:01 to 8:06 p.m. on October 1st. I didn't understand till yesterday why such a big deal was made out of the short time span. We'll go over why, because I kept thinking that was majoring on a minor detail, and it turns out it's not a minor detail. Because, I mean, plenty of things can happen quickly, but I'll talk about why that is important, why I didn't think it was important before, but I was wrong. This attempted action was problematic from the start. They called an online meeting intentionally timed to excluding the chair, vice chair, NCC county chair, and the NCC county rep to the state board by immediately declaring the state chair, vice chair, and NCC chair unavailable, and then passing the chairmanship of the online meeting to the Sussex County chair. Upon completing these actions, the group in attendance immediately called for a vote to approve this bylaw amendment. The bylaw in question was not properly notified to the body of the state party, as dishonest tactics were used to hide the proposed change from public view. The bylaw change was mentioned in passing once by an LP member in a post to the LPD Facebook group. Comments were turned off, and the post was not tagged using AOAA amendment notifications, as is past practice for the page administrator. And you'll notice there's been some more notifications. They purposely didn't tag it, by the way. We'll go over that. It appears that there may have been an effort to ensure increased traffic in the group at this time. That's now proven. The chair, vice chair, and the 2 Newcastle County board representatives did not see the notification. Neither did the now resigned secretary, Dale, by the way. This proposed change was not discussed between the board members at any time, nor did the secretary notify the board about an official proposed change in any communications. The secretary did not know about it. After these illegitimate actions were completed, Will McVeigh used a letter he composed containing unsubstantiated and untruthful charges against myself, Amy Lepore, and Dave Casey in an attempt to validate their actions. There was no forum, discussion, opportunity for proxy, or debate amongst the full board to challenge or substantiate these ridiculous allegations. In fact, at the last state board meeting on September 27th, the same 5 members complicit in these actions made sure to immediately vote to adjourn the meeting prior to any business being conducted. That's interesting. That's a new fact in my arsenal. We'll talk about how that's important in a minute. Increasingly, there's evidence that the actions described above, taken between August 31st and October 1st, that's the 30-day time window we were just talking about, appear to have been for the purpose of instituting the will of a separate political party, which now has custody over the financial accounts of the Libertarian Party of Delaware. As the duly elected chair of the LPD at our state convention in June of 2021, I will not accept this illegitimate action brought forth by Will McVeigh, Jim Brittingham, Perry Matt McVeigh, Joe DePasquale, and Brandy Kirchhoff. I and the board members named in their baseless purge attempt will continue to move the party forward in our elected positions. I'll just say here that from what I understand, there's around $10,000 in the bank account that I don't know like what your criminal code is in Delaware, but I think that could be moving to some serious charges. I'd be very concerned if I were any of those 5 people. I'd be very concerned. I'd be particularly very concerned if I were the treasurer, who I understand is related to Will. When I became chair, I found myself increasingly at odds with the people with whom I had once built relationships and shared the common vision of libertarian solutions to societal problems. Suddenly, caucus affiliation is more relevant to them than our shared history. I understand it can be difficult to set aside bias and judge individuals on their actions and not their group identity, but it is what we must do if this party has a future. There are times as libertarians when our principles must stand above our factional interests. If we are destined to affect the political trajectory of this country, it will only be through cooperation. Okay. Now that we've read the 2 letters, so you guys now hear both sides of what's going on. Let's see here. T. Flavius, because I can never pronounce your first name, asks who's behind the Cathedral Caucus page. I don't know everyone who's behind it, but apparently Kevin Gaughan just admitted being behind it. But I think also Aaron, and I'm forgetting his last name, from Pennsylvania, is also part of it. Oh, that's interesting, Carter. Okay. And when did Dale resign? I don't think I have that fact. Oh, let me put on here because not everyone see this. Carter says also, in order to vote at the 9/27 state board meeting was a properly noticed bylaw change to raise the bylaw amendment threshold from a simple majority to 2/3. Did Dale resign after that or before? I'm just trying to get my timeline down. Okay, let's remove that. And let's remove that. He resigned as the meeting ended. Got it. Okay. That's important, and I haven't yet put into my head why. There was something that Will said during that, and I didn't extract it out. During that, the system is down. He mentioned something about if we had known Will was going to resign, we would have done one thing differently. I might need to listen to that interview again to see what that was in reference to, because that is not one of the clips. Somebody who watched that interview, do you recall that statement where he had said that? Because there was one thing he had said that Will resigning like made them be like, if they had known Will was going to resign, they could have made themselves look better by not having to be so draconian because they wouldn't have had to overcome Will's objection. If y'all remember that from that interview, I'm going to listen to it again. I might do an update in the future once I can figure out what that was all about. Okay, let's go on to clips and we're going to talk about them.
Nominally things that are like it was definitely nothing concrete, nothing terribly productive. There were a lot of conversations about how to wrest control of the social media away from me, because that was clearly a priority for some members of the board, but was not the position of the majority of the board.
Okay. So they didn't have enough people in favor of... there were some people, if I'm understanding this correctly, there were some people that wanted to end your contract, and I guess would they be paying you for those assets to take them away from you?
They pay me $1 a year under the terms of my contract, and that's just to create mutual consideration. I donate the $1 back to the party. I don't actually get paid.
Okay.
But no, there was no conversation about paying me for any assets or anything like that. I mean...
Okay. I thought I clipped more of that, and maybe it's in the next one, because he does go on to say, I didn't clip it because I decided it was just going to be too long, but he talked about why the whatever, I don't know if it was this board or prior board, put all the assets under his control so that there would be accountability. Oh, I would love to hear his after party segment. so that there would be some accountability, but and that accountability would include if the party asked for Will to surrender the assets back to them and he didn't, they could sue him. But from what I understand in other conversations, Will is claiming those assets are his private property. If that comes up, go back to this "The System is Down" interview, because in it, he concedes that the party could ask for him to turn those pages over to them. And Joe, not a Fed. Yeah, he did say if they knew Dale was going to resign, they would, right, they wouldn't have had to have been so sneaky, because they were sneaky because they thought they would have to work around him, because he had been, I guess, the thing that he created a tie. Dale was somehow a factor here in trying to keep the peace in some ways. Or whenever Dale thought that side it was getting screwed, would be the tie vote, I guess. And they would have a majority 5-4 without Dale, is from what I understand. So they could have not done it for 2 of 3 county chairs. They could have made it, a different threshold, 2/3 or whatever. I don't know. But you're correct. That's what he had said. So, correct, Joe. It seems like one of the first issues was control of the social media, which shouldn't be a surprise, because it's no lie that it's no secret. I mean, lie isn't even the right word. It's no secret that Mises people are all about messaging. So, of course, they would be pretty concerned about who's running the social media. That's not a secret. And so apparently that was a battle right off. And the Mises people, or the people he didn't like, I'm just going to refer to them as the Mises people, because I think they were all Mises people that he didn't like, tried multiple times to get a majority to say, give admin access to somebody other or in addition to Will. And they didn't have the votes to do that. That's very important here. They didn't have the votes. So from their point of view, it was these guys that were being obstinate, the usurpers being obstinate and not getting things passed and causing a deadlock. Because that's an accusation that comes up later. So this board did not, the Mises people didn't get their way, and they didn't overthrow the board over it. They just tried again another day, which irritated him, which we'll hear later. So he didn't like that his social media control, for whatever reasons he thought he was better to do it, I don't even care. He didn't like that his social media control was constantly being challenged. Welcome to politics, people. There's a lot of people who don't like a lot of things. So, let's continue.
This wasn't anything having to do with eliminating the Mises caucus from the state party whatsoever. That's a fabricated
liar
thought.
Okay. I don't know Joe DePasquale. I will say something right off the bat here. And some people, before you call me a hypocrite, I'm aware that perhaps this same criticism could be directed towards some Mises people. But I have a real bad taste in my mouth by someone who says they've only been in the party 4 months and then engineers an unethical throwing out of people. I have a big problem with that. I don't know if he was manipulated by other people. He doesn't certainly seem so here. He seems very proud of what he did. And this guy just really rubbed me the wrong way. You don't come into a party and do that. You just don't do that. Now, maybe he's just new and doesn't know any better. But that was just wrong. And in this, and I realize that this criticism I'm going to give could shoot in all directions. I'm just telling you my personal convictions here. And people who were involved with Colorado at the time will tell you. My very first LPCO meeting was a budget planning meeting in which Jeff Orrick was the chair, and he was conducting it online. And this thing lasted like 8 or 9 hours and was probably the most boring thing in the entire world. But I was brand new and excited. I sat through it, not knowing anything that was going on. When I came to the next meeting, the board was astonished and was like, "You came back after that? You actually came back?" And within a few months, they were trying to rope me into official, like, authority positions. And you want to know what I said? And actually, you could listen to my nomination speech for not Daryl, Will Coley. My nomination speech for Will Coley, where I was like the only one who got up there and shat all over Bill Weld. And I told this story then, so you know I'm not making it up now. So I told the story in 2016. So they were trying to rope me into a position of authority, not a volunteer position, right away, like within a couple months. And what I told the board was, I'm brand new. I go, you don't offer the new convert to be the pastor of the fucking church. If I'm still here in a year, I will take a board position. You shouldn't be offering anybody any kind of voting authority until they've been here a year. And I know that most of the Mises people will disagree with me because a lot of them are brand new. This is my own personal conviction. I don't impose this on anybody else. But I waited a year because I said, I'm brand new. I don't even understand all of this. Now, some of the new Mises people have been libertarians for a really long time, and I would count that. I was not just a brand new party member, I was a brand new libertarian. I didn't know anything, okay? And after a year, almost a year to the month, I accepted appointment, or did I get elected? I can't remember, but I ended up becoming a communications director, a voting position on the board. Prior to that, I was a social media volunteer under the authority of experienced libertarians. But this is what happens. You get someone brand new. I don't know. This guy might have been a libertarian for years. I don't know. So I could be a bit off base here. Come into the party. You're in the party. He said right from the beginning he was made a county chair. I know that's common, but that's not best for the health of the party. And now 4 months later, he's engineering a coup of the state party? Joe, I don't know you, and I don't mean to be getting off on the wrong foot with someone I don't know, but check yourself before you wreck yourself, dude, because this isn't a good start. Not a good start at all. So I think I interrupted what he was saying because I just went on that rant about being new. So let me, and there's nothing wrong with new people, but again, don't engineer coups. Listen, if you're new and you think a coup needs to be engineered, let people who know more about the culture and the players than you do it, because the chances of you being right are really, really slim. And Joe, you are so wrong here. And I hope when you realize how wrong you are here, that you don't leave the party out of embarrassment, that you just admit that you were wrong and move on. And the people who have been in the party longer, like Will, shame on you for using a new man like this. You don't do that. But let me play that clip again, because I don't think he mentioned the 4 months. It just triggered me. But let's hear what he had to say.
This wasn't anything having to do with eliminating the Mises Caucus from the state party whatsoever. That's a fabricated thought.
Okay, so he just said that the idea that it was a Mises Caucus purge was fabricated, which is a fancy way of saying a lie. But was it, Joe? Or are you lying? And I'm not going to say, did you not know? In this case, I'm going to say, are you lying? Because you're specifically lying about yourself. Let's pull up some receipts, because you know I don't call people a liar without receipts. So let me find it. Okay. 1 second. I didn't have this properly loaded into my little shower here. So let my little shower thingy, that's a... Okay, here we go. Joseph David Pasquale, October 1st, right after it happened, or right around the time that it happened. Seems to me this was about making this about getting rid of the Mises Caucus. Or what did you mean by this, Joe? If you didn't mean for it to be interpreted that way, I have no other way it could be. But you certainly can't say it was fabricated, that people don't have reasonable reasons to think this was all about the Mises Caucus. You gave them that reason. So don't you dare call people liars when you're the one who gave them that reason. Now, if you want to explain this meme a different way, feel free. But don't you dare act like other people are lying or unreasonable at all to have that impression. Of course, this isn't the only proof of it. You had, I'll show you some others. The first one I brought up was this one, because this was him himself saying that. But let's pull up another. This is a screenshot, so I don't have a scroll up. Shannon, if you want to send me that, I'll put it on the screen. If you want to shoot it to me, tell me whether it's by email or whatever, I'll put it up. If people got other receipts you want me to show, I'll put it up. So let me pull up another one. I'm trying to show you things I hadn't seen from other people. Okay, that's not the other one I wanted to look at. Where? Oh, did I not upload it? There was one that Will did as well. Let me see what I can find here. I think just one I didn't upload. It's on my other desk, but it was in that somebody had mentioned it here before, but y'all can send it to me. There was one where Will had said it was also about, it was a post that it was about the Mises Caucus. There was also one, I think it's on my Facebook page, actually. One second here. Let me find this on one of my Facebook pages. But then you also had Jimmy, saying that that proposed bylaws amendment was about keeping Mises people out. And Will on The System is Down said, yeah, Jimmy got a little overzealous, but of course Will didn't say he repudiated that proposed bylaws amendment. He just said he didn't agree with what Jimmy said. But does that mean he's not going to vote for that proposed bylaws amendment? That's the question I want to know. We talked about that proposed amendment on Monday, but I'm going to pull it back up here because it's on my Facebook page. I'm just finding it here. But I think that's also where I saw that additional screenshot from Will. Yep, it's right here. Okay, yep, let me share my screen here. And let me make this bigger. Oh, that didn't make it bigger. That made it smaller. Hopefully you can see. Let me, so you have here this to he be the praise, I guess. And you wonder why the LP Mises Caucus is taking over the party. Down here, you see Will saying, wait until you see the AOA amendments that are coming. So Will is connecting those AOA amendments to the anti-Mises action. So he cannot now distance himself from what Jimmy said, because the post that he was confronted with about Jimmy was about those AOA amendments. And I'll show you those again, which is right here, which is basically will give the state board the power to veto. I mean, this is the most authoritarian piece of shit amendment I'd ever seen in my life. That the state board can remove or reappoint county officers, can veto all county motions, can amend county bylaws, can reassign responsibility for county assets, which is just a fancy way of saying steal the county's money, and a disaffiliation of the county. That's a typical power. I'm not going to rag on them for that. And also that members have to be approved by the state board. This is the most authoritarian piece of shit. And anyone who votes for this is an authoritarian piece of shit. I'm going to say it. Okay. Let me get back here. So Will can't distance himself from saying this wasn't about Mises. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth like that. But there's going to be another quote where I'm going to explain how he justifies out of one side of his mouth saying it's not about Mises, and then pretty much saying it's about Mises. I'll show you how he tries to square that circle, and it doesn't fly, but I want to give you his argument. And I'd like to hear you repudiate that amendment, Will, because there's no way in the world that I know, there's no way in the world you think that is proper. And let's pretend that their takeover was completely legitimate. If they passed that bylaws amendment, they just gave national grounds to disaffiliate them, because that's as unlibertarian as it gets. And I don't like, some people love when I make these, use this phrase. I don't want to mind the subjunctive here, but depending upon the circumstances and the way a motion was worded, if I were still on the LNC, which I might be back, but I might not this term, and it were presented to me, a disaffiliation motion for a state party that had that kind of provisions, I'm nearly positive I would vote yes, because that is just abusive to every member of the state party. And we would not want to be associated with that. They would definitely be drawing a disaffiliation, or potentially drawing a disaffiliation motion if they pass that. I tend to also think, I don't know what their state laws are, but I know in some states, having membership requirements like that for a political party, which gets granted certain privileges by the state, would be illegal. Not in every state, but some states have laws, and I'm not invoking the state here. I'm just saying reality. I don't give a fuck what the state says, honestly. I think this would be National's problem, but I'm just saying that they risk legal trouble. I don't know if the laws are like that in Delaware. I know in some states they would risk legal trouble. Okay. And if I were a donor in Delaware and this happened, this is theft. A group that just did a coup is now in control of money you donated. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Meant to discredit what the problem actually was. As a new member of the state board, as somebody who wanted to join the party and help and get things done and help pass amendments and bylaws, and as somebody new, not really fully under.
Okay. He's just admitting that he's new and doesn't fully understand. Let me tell you one thing. Passing amendment and bylaws is not getting things done. They're necessary. They're important. But if you think that's getting things done, you got some really messed up priorities. They're necessary things, but getting things done is getting freedom for people in the world, not passing bylaws. And I say this as a person who loves bylaws. I just don't think that's the main work of the party. And yeah, but anyway, I hope I'm not being too hard on this guy. He really did rub me the wrong way, but I don't know him. I don't want to be harsh on a new person. And Joe, I would be more than glad to talk to you one-on-one. I would not put you, and this isn't, I don't think Dan knew the background, so this isn't a criticism on Dan, but I would not put you on my show because I would not put a new person under that kind of scrutiny. And again, I don't think Dan had any idea of your background, and perhaps he would disagree with me here, but I just wouldn't do that to a new person because I have a feeling you're going to be very embarrassed by this interview in a year.
Understanding everything and trying to learn more about it as we go as well. The butting heads was really mostly about one person, and that was Dave. Every time we had a state board meeting, and I mean, he said it on your show the other day.
Okay, I'm going to say this just like I did about the LNC about me, because Joe, you could be channeling the voice of 11 LNC members here who just thought I was just the most terrible asshole on the LNC. If you can't deal with one difficult to deal with board member, you are not ready to tackle the state. And if this is the way you handle one difficult person, God forbid you ever get in any kind of real power.
So it's not like I'm calling him out here.
Sure,
He's
yeah.
an asshole. So
I absolutely agree with you
and
on
that's
that.
fine. People, there's places in the world for people like that. But this,
For people like that? Excuse me? You want to know what I think is at the height of assholery? Engineering a coup of a state party. That was an asshole move, Joe. Should I say there's a place for people like... Don't do that. That was just very, very dehumanizing what you just said there. I didn't like that one bit. I don't say things like that about people I can't stand. People are... Never mind. I don't know. It rubbed me like a you people type of thing. I don't know. I would rather somebody who's just abrasive and difficult to get along with than someone who's the nicest guy in the world yet engineers a coup like Joe Bishop Henchman, who at least appeared to be the nicest guy in the world and turned out whatever. And they kept saying it wasn't about him being an asshole, but it was about him being an asshole. Like, they kept saying it wasn't about Dave being an asshole, but they kept saying it was about Dave being an asshole. And as a fellow asshole, I have some sympathy for Dave here. From one asshole to another. I tend to think the Libertarian Party is made up of assholes. Welcome, fellow assholes. I love you all. Oh, Joe, yeah, it's not a good time to be a Joe. We'll call you Jose. Well, we'll go with that. At least you're not a Fed. It's for people who don't know what I'm commenting on. It's right here. And Shannon, I know I too can be an asshole. Though I'm not always one, but I know I can be one. But generally, when I'm an asshole, it's very calculated to serve a purpose. And I usually feel bad about it. But sometimes you have to be an asshole. But I've never, ever engineered a coup of a state party. Well, let's put it to this. When I use the word coup, because like people will talk about takeover and then people will talk about takeover. There's takeovers and there's takeovers. There's coups and there's coups. When I use the word coup, I only use it in the negative way. There are legitimate coups. Like I would say what happened in Colorado at our convention was a legitimate coup. The Mises people came in, and made Colorado their bitch. But that was it was proper elections. There was no funny business. Some people would call that a coup. I wouldn't, but I wouldn't have a problem calling it a takeover. So I guess it's just my choice of language. But just know, whenever I say the word coup, I mean it in the illegitimate sense, not in the go to a convention and outcompete everybody. Okay, next clip.
This whole thing was never about removing the Mises Caucus.
Yes, it was. Did I already play this?
Came about initially as it was actually my idea.
Okay.
I wasn't the vehicle.
Okay. Now, Joe admits it was his idea. The experienced people should not have went along with it.
For it, obviously, that was Will, but about getting Dave off the state board. Mm-hmm. That was the initial thought, and then that was when the plot started to thicken, so to speak, and then the plot took place.
So to speak. Are you channeling Hoppy there? Did you more than digitally remove Dave? And they even call it a plot. Listen, when you're calling what you're doing a plot, I think that's when you should step back and think that maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere. Just saying. Just a friendly hint from Mama Karen here. Woof. Okay, Joe, there's a very easy way to remove Dave. Run somebody better against him at next convention. Or however it is, like if he was a county rep, I'm not, I'm just saying. There is a legitimate way to get rid of a board member you don't like. Get someone else. You don't remove somebody that is there legitimately elected. You just don't do that because you don't like them. I didn't extract this part, but Dan made an argument that's near and dear to my heart because it's an argument that I made in my own suspension. Dan said, was Dave an asshole when the delegates elected him? And everyone admitted he was. Okay. Then the delegates wanted an asshole, and that's their prerogative. Too bad. So sad. Cry me a fucking river. Who are you to think that you and your little merry band of plotters get to overturn that? The delegates are allowed to make bad decisions. And that's an argument that I made in my case. I understand that 11 people on the LNC don't like me. You want to know what I said to them? Too bad. So sad. A majority of delegates did. And I'm the same person now as I was when I was elected. In fact, I promised, let's just pretend, because I'm sure the LNC, they'd be way too polite to say this, because decorum, right? I'm sure those 11 members of the LNC think I'm an asshole. I ran on a platform then of being an asshole, and the delegates ate it up. They elected me to be the LNC asshole. Of course, that's not what I think I'm doing, but just to say, too bad. They don't like it. I'm sorry, the delegates didn't ask your permission, and they don't have to. I find this so offensive. You don't get to do that. The delegates can choose who they want within, the qualifications set forth by your bylaws. If you guys want to make it so that, the rest of the board has a right of first refusal against any election person, try putting that in your bylaws. Let the delegates put it in there rather than you guys amending your own bylaws, which is just insane to me, but that isn't your choice. What kind, you have to have an ego the size of a blimp in order to think you have the right to do that. How dare you? It's the same chutzpah that 11 members of the LNC have. I hurt their feelings. Grow up. If you can't handle one pink-haired, nearly elderly secretary, then you can't handle the state. If you can't handle one asshole named Dave, then I'm sorry, you're not ready for prime time. I'm sorry, Dave. I don't think you mind me. Like, I'm just taking their... Listen, Dave, I don't think you're an asshole. Maybe it's because I'm an asshole. I don't know. I've never had a problem with you. Or maybe, you know, it's just I'm too autistic to notice. I'm just using their words. I don't think you'll mind. You seem like you're a big boy, and you're probably not crying in your cereal right now.
I mean, I can think of some examples from Twitter in particular. I know I've been called a cancer on the party. I've been called a piece of shit on his podcasts. He made some...
Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. The last chair of Colorado called me a cancer on the party. The last... I don't think he was a board member at the time, but it was a former board member. Maybe he was a board member at the time. I forgot what position he was in because he's failed at every single position he's had, but called me, you know, the C word. John, I'm just like pulling shit out of the air, you know. I'm just saying, like, I didn't say I would approve of that. I'm just talking, you know. I actually don't think that's a good idea. I'm just saying, try to get the delegates to pass that. They wouldn't. That was kind of my point. It was kind of like saying, well, if you want someone to stab themselves in the eye with a fork, why don't you ask them to do that? I mean, to me, it was a rhetorical thing that obviously this right of first refusal is not something that the delegates would ever pass. It was supposed to be rhetorical, supposed to be intentionally absurd. Just these guys. My God. Yeah, so what? He called you names. Okay. I've seen you call people names, Will. This is the LNC argument. Laura Epke was upset because I said those fuckers. Without realizing I call everybody that. That's almost like... I admitted to her, well, you know, when I called certain LNC members that, I didn't mean it as a term of endearment, but that word to me isn't like that big of an insult. Like, I call everybody that. So, like, I don't know. If I was going to really insult you, it wouldn't be with a curse word. Because to me, curse words are like cheap, just like filler almost, because it's just my personality. If I'm going to insult you, I'm going to get really, really creative with the English language. Like if I'm going to put some effort into it. So like somebody getting really offended at me calling somebody the F-bomb, that's like lazy. Like, you know, I'm going to come up with something really creative if I'm really invested in insulting you. Like, there was a friend of mine a long time ago. He had this great insult who said something like, you are an example of what happens when a brain dies, but the body keeps on growing. Now, to me, that's a great insult. Calling somebody an effer, that's nothing. That's filler.
Innuendos about my 67-year-old mother, who is the treasurer of the party, as he mentioned. And
okay, I'm going to stop right there. If anyone was insulting people's family members, I don't know if anyone was. That's wrong. Don't do it. It's gross. It was gross when people did it to Joshua Smith's family. Don't do it to Will's. Don't do it. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just saying, I don't like it. Don't do it. However, another thing you don't do, though, is invoke the, she's my mother. She's the treasurer. She's not your mother in this role. She's the treasurer. She's a grown-ass woman. We're very careful about that, Wayne and I. I don't want anyone to ever have to deal with Wayne on the terms of, how dare you be disrespectful to my wife, the secretary. No. People, when they get on a board, didn't count on having to deal with a family tag team. Okay? You are your role, she is their role. Your family thing is outside. That's why I always say to Wayne, do not fight my battles, because people, when they're arguing with me, shouldn't have to argue with me and my husband. Okay? You don't do that. You don't if you don't want people dragging in family, don't you drag in family relationships. I think it's great. Families are on boards together. Wonderful. But you don't capitalize on that family relationship to score emotional points. Okay? I don't do it with Wayne. Wayne doesn't do it with me. And it can be tough, believe me. When he sees me getting like really shit on, don't you think as a husband he wants to go leave my wife alone? And there's been times when I've had to say to him, don't fight my battles. You're not my husband here. You're the state chair. If it's appropriate for you as state chair to step in, fine. But I'm not your wife, the secretary. I am simply the secretary.
I feel like we're dwelling a little too much on this, because at the end of the day, the issue here isn't mean words. The issue isn't mud decorum. I mean, I'm an asshole too. I'm perfectly willing to admit that.
Then why do you keep bringing it up? You can't say the issue's not mean words when you just said, but my mom. You can't. You can't have it both ways, Will. And I get it. If somebody said something bad about my mom, I'd be upset too. But if my mom was the treasurer, I would either have to just deal with it.
Really what it comes down to...
Oh, and I know, and he mentioned something like my 60-something-year-old. I don't know. If your mother's like a typical libertarian, I don't think she'd appreciate being painted as this frail old lady. I'll tell you something. I don't know. Whenever I'm 60-something years old, I'm going to be a tough old bird. And no one's going to need to go, oh, but the 60-something-year-old, no. No, thank you. I could probably still, like... I might be physically weaker, but and as long as my mind's there... I don't care how fucking old I am. I'll be able to go toe-to-toe mentally with anybody. And I don't need somebody to go, oh, but that poor old lady. Oh, okay. Finished. Sorry. From one almost old lady to another old lady. We can handle ourselves. Get off my lawn.
Being an asshole in such a way that you try to avoid accountability for it. Like Joe said in his comment there and just repeated now, he's blocking all of these people in the party, but he's doing...
Okay, so who he blocks or doesn't block, with one exception, we're going to get into this, and Dave, you can let me know if what he's saying is true or not. It's not your business. Do you want to know how many people I have on my block list? Crap. If I had to guess, 300. I got at least 200 on my block list. But it could be as many as 500. I block liberally because nobody has a claim on my attention. So what? Oh, he's an asshole without accountability. So? What are you, God? God, it's like, so? How's that your business? And the fact is, if he's such an asshole, you should be glad he's blocking a lot of people so they don't see what an asshole he is.
From his position as a moderator for the group.
Stopping there. Now that there is an issue. He goes on, Daniel, to say, it can be an issue if you're a moderator in a group and you've blocked a lot of people, but there are other moderators in the group. I don't think being a moderator means you need to interact with everybody.
So he can still interact with their content, but they can't respond to him.
Okay. If Dave has people blocked and he's interacting with them where he can see their comments, but they can't see his, that's an abuse of power. It's not something to remove somebody over. Maybe it's to say you can't be a moderator if you do that. I've been known to do that. I know the temptation, Dave. If you do it, I get it. I've done it. When I was in the Radical Caucus, I blocked a hell of people. And I would sometimes respond to them when I knew they couldn't respond back. But it wasn't the right thing to do. But who cares if he blocks people?
Okay. See what I mean? Like, it's, again, if you want to be a dick, fine, be a dick. I'm not going to judge you on that. This isn't about mean words. But if you're going to be a dick, you're not going to do it on somebody else's post that you've blocked them from responding to you on.
Okay, if that's true, that's a fair point. Then remove him from being a moderator. Or let me ask you, are there rules in place about that? If there isn't, maybe you need to make some. That's not the biggest deal in the world. Like, who cares? Fine. The way we solved that in the LPCO group is the moderator account was the official account under LPCO, and that account could see everybody, but people under their personal accounts weren't admins, so they interacted like everybody else and they could block whoever they wanted. But whatever, this is just, you need a good social media policy. You need some rules for your moderators. Who cares? That has nothing to do with this situation. Who cares? That, like, this is a red herring. I mean, they just really got a hard on for you, Dave, but okay, fair point, maybe. But it has nothing to do with why you would engineer a coup of the state party.
Well, the chair and the vice chair were included as well because they are kind of part of this center of gravity on the state board that's blocking things.
Oh, Senator, I almost thought he was going to call you the axis of evil. That would have been way cooler. That would have been so much cooler if he had called you guys the axis of evil. Whoa. So, Amy and Bill, they got canned for being friends with Dave. Okay, why don't you just say it's because they weren't voting the same way as you? Because that's really what it's about, isn't it? And like Amy, I don't know Bill as well, okay? Amy is the sweetest person. Like, for people say you want this professional image and like nice people and hardworking. Dr. Amy Lepore, dude, like, there's your poster woman right there. Like, everything about her screams professionalism and non-assholery.
From getting accomplished and not working with the entire state board versus working with the Mises Caucus affiliated members of the board.
Okay. I'm sorry I keep interrupting. No, I'm not. That is called politics. Let me tell you a story about Colorado. Again, as I said, we had a Mises takeover in Colorado. I was elected as a non-Mises member, and so was Wayne, and so was Dan. There's a few non-Mises members. But let me tell you what happens sometimes. We three get manhandled by the Mises members who vote as a block. Okay? Is it great? Do I love it? No. But I also don't get ass mad about it because that's politics. That's the way it is. You win some, you lose some. I wasn't a member of the caucus at that time. I don't expect them to consult with me on everybody. There's no requirement for that. And if they have certain goals that they want to get done because they think it moves their vision for the LPCO forward, I expect them to vote as a block. That's what happens. I don't get ass mad about it. I mean, that's just dumb. Like, grow up. This is politics. Basically, the cool kids wouldn't play with you. Okay, well then maybe become a cool kid. I don't know what to tell you. But I'm speaking from somebody who's been frozen out of discussions on the LPCO board. So has our chair. It happens. Who cares? Like, grow up. This is politics. And yeah, Cam's got a good point. So they're complaining about allegedly Mises people having these secret meetings where these guys weren't included, so they turn around and do the bad thing back. Like, that's preschool. You don't, unless, and the only reason I even brought up the Colorado is I'm not saying it to be mad about it, because now I am a Mises member, so I don't know if I'm going to be let in the secret cabal with the handshake and all of that. That isn't why I joined. But Even if so, too bad. Forget about caucus stuff. You don't think there's little coalitions that form on every board? Forget about caucus stuff. You don't think there's these little coalitions on the LNC? I was the victim of one of them. It happens. You don't think people phone bank ahead of time without telling the rest of the LNC and they're going to vote as a block? Of course they do. I don't do that personally. Probably because I hate talking on the phone. But there's nothing wrong with that. I don't do it. And again, it's just my personal thing. But it happens. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, people have coalitions. Hell, I remember sometimes, there's times in board meetings where, and I have done this, but it was more kind of as a joke, but there's been a little coordination, like even at LNC meetings, where like somebody's just saying something that's bullshit, and I'll text somebody else who's sitting across the table and I'll be like, get a load of this, we're voting against this, right, type of thing. And pretty much just to see them look at their phone and then look up at me like, did you just text me in the middle of a meeting? But it happens. Like, oh my God, like, how long have you been in politics, dude? And let me tell you, when I talk with Will on the phone, and you know what, I want to get this out here too. I'm friends with Will. I know some people don't like that. I'm friends with Will. I don't know after the show if he'll still, but I'm friends with Will. When I talked to Will, I told him honestly what I thought. And I told him also, honestly, the first time we talked, I told him my initial gut impression was that what they did was legal but unethical. And he agreed with me. But I said to him, but Will, I haven't looked at your documents yet. I haven't looked at the notice. I go, this is just my gut. And I made a promise to Will. I said, Will, before I call you out on anything that was done procedurally wrong, you will hear it privately from me first. Remember, I said to you guys that I came to the conclusions I came to yesterday. Why didn't I say it immediately? Why did I wait to make a post about it? Because I kept my promise to Will. I wanted to talk to him first to say, hey, these are the problems I found. I promised you would hear it from me personally first. And I always keep my word. And I kept my word to Will. And I know some people have been like, how could you say you're friends with him? He did such a shitty thing. Yeah, he did a shitty thing. So did Gilletta Jarvis. People are more than their shitty acts. Listen, I know a lot of people get mad at me for this, but let me tell you where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a position as a Christian where I know that maybe not in this party, but in my life, I've done terrible things and I've been forgiven by God. And there's a verse in the Bible that says, he or she who has been forgiven much forgives much. It says, for the measure of grace that was shown to you, show that measure of grace to others. And that is something I try to live by. Now, there are points of no return. Like I've said about, like Richard Longstreth on the LNC. We will never, ever, ever be friends again. And I don't even know yet if I could forgive him. But he's never asked for forgiveness. So that bridge will have to cross if he ever asks me for forgiveness. But I don't hate him. I hated him for about 2 days. And then I had to get over it for the sake of my relationship with God. So I know a lot of people don't like all the religious stuff, but I just tell you that so you understand why I try to like everybody and why why I say No, Justin, that's not what I'm saying. I wouldn't trust Will to hold a position of office. No. But all I'm saying is people are more than their bad acts. And everyone here is free to feel how they will. Just don't expect me to feel how you do, I guess is the way to go. There's a reason why when Aaron Adams was on my stream the other day, and I was very upset with her, and I was calling her all kinds of names. Why did I stop and make sure I said 2 nice things for every bad thing? To keep my, to live by my principles. That's why I said, Aaron, you're such a, this is what I said to Aaron. I said this so many times. Y'all could watch the stream. I was like, Aaron, blah, 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 blah. And then I stopped and said, but you know what? Aaron Adams is the mother of a special needs adult child. Do you know what a burden that is? Do you know what a sacrifice that is? Aaron Adams is a fantastic mother. I always do things like that to step back and remember that people are more than just bad acts. Even Hitler didn't kick every dog on the street. And I do absolutely believe in boundaries. Absolutely believe in boundaries. And I also believe in when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I know those 2 things can seem contradictory, but I would encourage everybody, for every bad thing you say about somebody, try to find one nice thing. And the example I even say, I can find nice things to say about Satan. The way I say it, he wears red really well, and not too many demons, I guess, could accessorize a pitchfork. You know, that's me, though. That's me. And you can be irritated at me for that, but I have to live by my own principles.
And trying to force those decisions on the rest of the board after the fact.
How are they trying to force those decisions?
But you were forcing a decision, Will. Everything you're accusing these other people of doing. Oh, God, Otto, that is a barbed insult, isn't it? That's almost like bless your heart. Let me put this up here. Oh, let me remove me here. Yeah, there is a lot of projection here. There's a lot of projection. It reminds me of my ex-husband who kept accusing me of cheating when he was the one cheating. You know how that goes? Usually when someone is so adamant on accusing other people of things, like so often, you know how that goes. Okay, next clip here.
So there are a number of things that have come up recently, articles of association amendments that they're trying to make and have made notifications for, bylaw changes, etc., that they're not consulting with the other members of the state board before they put them out there. They're just...
Did you consult on this one, Will? How could you say this with a straight face? Will. My God.
They're coming up with them in their own little group, and then they put them out there, and then they try to get us to vote on them, and they end up getting...
Okay. And that's how boards work.
Down. It's like, how many times are we going to keep coming up with things that everybody's then going to end up voting down? Why don't we try to work together and come up with a compromise that we can all actually agree on?
Okay. I also watched the interview with Bill and Amy, and I really enjoyed that. And I was going to pull some clips out from that, but I decided I could just summarize it. I absolutely agreed with Bill when he said, and I said the same thing to Will. So maybe I agreed with Bill because he agreed with me. Oh my God, that's like That's somewhat narcissistic. You agree with me, so I think you're wonderful. No, but we actually came at it from a different angles. When I was talking with Will, I said, Will, what was so bad that you had to do this? And he said, the board was useless for the past 4 months. Can anyone here guess what I said to him after he said that? I want to see how well you guys know me. When he said to me, yeah, but the board was useless for the past 4 months. I'm just giving y'all a chance to see if you can guess what I said to him. I'm going to play the Jeopardy music because I know there's a bit of a delay here. So while we're waiting for the guesses, Daniel, you got it. Daniel W. knows me. I love being known so well. I love being so predictable. I said, so? And? Daniel, oh my God, I love that. I'm so predictable. Principled people are predictable. I did. That's exactly what I said. I said, so? Yeah, so? And I don't think he knew how to take that. I'm like, it happens. So, you don't think I've ever been on useless boards? Hell, this past LNC's been mostly useless. I never tried to remove any of them. I wish they treated me the same way. The LPCO board, from the past 2 years, with the exception of lockdowns, because they were excellent on lockdowns, were useless. Worse than useless. So, I didn't try to get any of them removed. I just planned for a convention. I'm like, what was the harm? So what? So you have a useless board until next convention. Who cares? But I liked what Bill had to say. Bill took it further. He's like, sometimes, he don't word it this way, but I'm going to paraphrase him. Sometimes the best thing a board can be is useless. At least they aren't harmful. I love it when government is useless, because they could be harmful. And that's usually the only two options, useless or harmful. I'll take useless. So what? So you have a useless board. If the delegates elected a diversity of people, if you guys can't get a majority, this is what Bill said, perhaps that means there isn't enough consensus that would fairly represent the whole party to get something passed. That's your escape valve. Like, that's your pressure valve. You can't get something passed, maybe it should never have gotten passed then. That's a feature, not a bug. It's kind of like when the LNC accused me. This was an accusation. I wish I were shitting you, for those of you who didn't really read the charge. You want to know what one of my crimes was? That I caused the resignation of Joe Bishop Henchman. That was one of my crimes. And I said this in the meeting. You're blaming me for that? You're giving me a lot of credit, but if I'm to blame for that, you should be thanking me. That is a feature, not a bug. Okay. So I think I brought this up in the clip, but it'll be coming up where he'd go, well, but it kept happening over and over. It was how often do we need to rehash these sorts of things? You have a remedy for that, dude. Ask the chair. Well, of course, Bill was the chair. He might not have, but you don't know how he would have ruled. If the same motion, well, A, you're allowed to do that for one thing under the rules. Let's look up some rules here. But you could have just asked the chair to rule it dilatory. It annoyed you. I'm sorry. You being annoyed isn't a crime. But let me look up here. And what I'm looking up is renewal of motions. And what a renewal of motion is, bringing up the same motion over and over again. Okay, says here, renewal of motions is limited by the basic principle that an assembly cannot be asked to decide the same or substantially the same question twice during one session. A session is, a convention can be multiple meetings, but generally on a board, a session is one meeting. You might not like that they bring up the same motion every meeting, but they're allowed to. You don't like that somebody's doing what they're allowed to. Too bad. Too bad. Generally, it's not wise to continue to bring up the same thing, because you just end up annoying the rest of your board members who may vote against something of yours later on just out of spite because you annoyed them. So it's not good, how to win friends and influence people type of thing, but they're allowed to do it. So basically, you're complaining against board members exercising their basic rights. You want to know who complains about people exercising their basic rights? Usually called tyrants.
That was problematic. And I think one particular example that really set this whole thing in relief is when the chair tried to call an emergency meeting with, I think, less than 24 hours notice. Joe in particular wasn't going to be available for that.
The projection. How much notice did you give this board of your little cabal to remove 3 members? It all took place within 5 minutes, didn't it? 5 minutes, 24 hours. You actually had the nerve to complain about 24 hours, and you did all of this in 5 minutes. Now, I don't know if what you're saying about Bill is true with 24 hours. If he tried to call an emergency board meeting within 24 hours, he was wrong. And I'll explain why when we're done with these clips. Your bylaws don't give a shorter time frame for so-called emergency meetings. Like if you look at Colorado's bylaws, you have to have a minimum of 48 hours notice for a special meeting. Your bylaws don't have anything like that, so it defaults to Roberts. And 24 hours is not enough notice. So what? So Bill made a mistake. Last I checked, Bill was human. He made a mistake. So what? It happens. You object. That's what you do when your chair makes a mistake.
Yeah, like I said, it's the conduct on the state board in particular, trying to basically redo things over and over again and get us in this endless cycle of, trying to take control of the social media assets themselves rather than, just use them as he was allowed to use them.
What was he doing?
You're allowed to continue to bring things up. I'm sorry that you found that annoying. And because you keep harping on the social media thing, I think it's because you think your authority was being questioned, and it was. And okay, you can be ass mad about it, but you don't remove people over it.
To try and overtake it, though. What he was going through the processes. He was saying that we should do this, we should vote on this, we should go through these processes as like he wasn't calling for anything that was against the bylaws, was he? He was just doing something he didn't like.
Not in particular.
Not in particular, not at all. Not in particular or in general, not at all. Dan nailed it. Dan nailed it a lot here. Dan was just cracking me up when he's like, this is the most interesting, boring thing I've ever heard. Yeah, he wasn't doing anything against not only the bylaws, but against parliamentary procedure or against typical what happens on boards.
It became redundant.
Yeah.
3 state board meetings.
Welcome to politics. Welcome to committees and politics and democracy, my friend. It's all redundant.
We're trying to do better than that.
You're not doing a good job. Okay, we now have, you guys know, let me go here. I'm going to give Delaware a gift. I have the Ma Decorum t-shirt. You guys need to come up with Ma Redundancy. Because apparently that is the big crime. That's what I took away from all of this, is you just kept repeating things and they didn't like it. Ma Redundancy. So what? You're allowed to do it. And I don't think Joe knows that because he's new.
Again, it's not his affiliation itself that's problematic. I think the failure to disclose it, given the concerns.
Okay, I asked Will, is there a rule requiring disclosure of alleged conflicts of interest? They're talking about making a rule for disclosure of caucus affiliation. I think that's completely abusive. If you want to have a rule against a rule like the LNC does that says all potential conflicts of interest need to be disclosed, fine. But you can't just single out caucus things because there are other things that could be potential conflicts of interest. So what? There's no rule. And if somebody, I said this on Monday's show, if somebody asked him and he denied it, that's one thing. But if nobody asked, he's under no duty to disclose that. Why do you think you have this claim on him?
Or in the party at the time is an issue. It's a relevant piece of information that I think delegates would have done better to have known.
Sorry, say that.
Oh, whoa. You think delegates would have done better to know this? Will, you're not the father of these delegates. This paternalism. If I were a Delaware delegate right now, I'd be super offended and go, how dare you tell me what would have been better for me to have known? Maybe it'd be better for you to mind your own damn business. If delegates want to know something, they can ask it. It's not up for you to decide what they want to know. If a delegate decides to vote for somebody because they think Jesus talked to them in a slice of toast, that's their right. This paternalism over the delegates is something that keeps coming up over and over and over, and it's highly, highly offensive. And you contradict yourself, Will, here because you claim this Mises thing was a huge controversy in the party at the time of convention, which means it was a known factor, which means unless you think your delegates are so stupid that they walk into Wall's face first, they knew about the controversy, they could have asked about it, and they didn't. And that is their choice.
His failure to disclose what?
He didn't disclose that he was a member of the Mises Caucus, and that by itself,
Is that a problem?
That he's a member of the caucus is not a problem. But given the sentiment in the party at the time, it's information that the other delegates would have liked to know.
If they would have liked to have known it, they would have asked it. Michael, I'm going to disagree with you here 1 second. Let me put this up. Michael says one thing Dan never brought up is that, and I let me do some explanation here for some people who aren't in Delaware because it took me a while to understand this. You guys have something called the Articles of Association, which is equivalent to what some other parties have called the Constitution. Some have Constitution and bylaws. You guys have Articles of Association and bylaws. Just so some people know what AOA is, I had to learn that. It says that one of the duties of the state board is to administer web pages and social media pages. Boards are allowed to delegate their authority. So if the board legitimately delegated it to Will, that is them administering the web pages and social media pages. So Michael, I do think you're incorrect here. I would be interested to know if there never was a motion turning it over to Will. But if there was, there's no conflict here. As much as, I would like to agree with everyone on every point, I don't think that is necessarily a valid point. And I haven't seen Will's contract, Carter, so you guys, if you have a copy of it, and if it's not confidential, I would love to see it. But if it's confidential, please, I don't want any breaches of confidence.
And would have benefited from knowing, and they did not.
So it's
And
not a
even that-
removable offense, you're saying?
Even that by itself is not necessarily all that bad, but then to go on and work more closely with other members of the Mises Caucus on the state board to try to develop policy and try to implement policy, to do the things that he did where he's unilaterally calling emergency meetings that, other...
Wait. It's the job of the state chair to call meetings. By nature, they unilaterally call meetings. Like, that's what chairs do. Now, they can be challenged, but it's the duty of the chair to call meetings. And it's, okay, let me unwrap this. The only way you can come to a board decision is to have a meeting. But by Will's logic, you have to come to a board decision before you have a meeting. Do you understand the chicken and egg thing he just did here? The buck has to start somewhere. And the buck to start to call a meeting is typically the role of a state chair. Or they instruct the secretary to do it. But that's just a weird accusation.
Members that don't agree with him can't show up to. That's where you start getting more into the neighborhood of, that we need.
Okay, I want to give you guys a strategic thing here. Oh, I'll wait till this is over. Remind me, because I'm like scattered, that there's a strategic Robert's ninja move I want to teach you guys.
Get rid of this guy and have somebody else be the chair who recognizes the boundaries of its authority.
Gotcha.
Calling meetings is the boundaries of authority. Okay, let's say you guys, any of you, this isn't about Delaware, you have some just Tyrannosaurus, Tyrannitarian state chair that purposely sets meetings for where people who wouldn't agree with a decision that's going to be made can't attend. I would highly suggest you learn something in Roberts called reconsider and enter on the minutes. There is ways to protect your rights. Let's, hope you don't mind me doing a little ninja thing here, because a lot of people don't know about this. Roberts 37. One day, somebody is going to thank me for this, because this could save your bacon. I almost wish I did this with my suspension motion, but it's not a main motion, so I don't think I could have done that. But let me read this from the Holy Word. Reconsider and enter on the minutes is a special form of the motion to reconsider. Its purpose is to prevent a temporary majority from taking advantage of an unrepresentative attendance at a meeting to vote for an action that is opposed by the majority of a society or convention's membership. The effect of this form of the motion arises from the fact that when it is moved on the same day that the vote to be reconsidered was taken, it cannot be called up until another day. Thus, with a view to obtaining a more representative attendance, it ensures reconsideration of a question on a different day from the one on which the question was put to a vote. That's what you do. But you have to vote for the motion in order to move to reconsider it. Some people consider that dishonest. It's not if the whole thing was there's an unrepresentative attendance. But I would highly suggest you learn that motion. And that will save you from a chair you think is doing something like that. Okay. And Carter says that meeting was moved so all can attend. So I don't know why he's still harping on it. It seems like the chair called something, got told no, got slapped down, and it got moved.
So he didn't do anything removable, is what you're saying.
There's no definition for removable in the bylaws. The definition.
So, could you remove them? Now, I know some... We'll get into this. Okay.
Is,
just up to whatever you feel like at the time?
2 out of 3 county chairs.
Okay. Well, it wasn't 2 out of 3 county chairs until you had to hijack the bylaws in order to make that happen. Just so that we're clear. But we're going to get into this whole removal thing when I talk about what the LNC can and cannot do.
No, it's not splitting hairs, because if you walk away from the post with comments on and then they get turned off by somebody else.
Okay. Let me just stop here, because this is kind of out of order. So what they did, let's Actually, I don't need to play the rest of this clip. I can explain it. All right. So the bylaws say that you can post a notice of bylaws amendment. And this, I'm sorry, this show is going on a long time, and it's going to probably go on another hour. Because I told you this is going to be a long one. So tip your host. Super chats are always welcome. I got to get the LNC mad in some way for all my grifting. Okay. So what they did is they had a member, a sympathetic member, post a bylaws amendment notice. Allegedly. It wasn't. We're going to go over that after all these clips I'm going to show you. In the group. And then Will turned off the comments. He denies this until he was shown the evidence by Dan, which was just brilliant. And his story made no sense, where he said, well, I turned them back on and then they were back off, and yeah, something, yeah, but maybe kind of no. Let's look. Here, one second. Let me pull this up, the same screenshot that Dan showed, because this is called getting hoisted on your own petard. Make sure I have the right one here. Okay. All right. He claims that Steve turned off comments, but yet it says Will McVeigh turned off commenting on that same day. Now, this screenshot was not taken that same day because, as he even says, the board who got removed didn't even know about this post until after the removal. So on that day, Will McVeigh turned off the comments. Maybe we will need to play the rest of that clip because there's something else he says that's really interesting. So why is this important? Well, if you know anything about Facebook groups, the way you keep a post fresh is the comments bump it up. But if you turn off comments, the only people who see it are those who were right there when it was posted, unless it's a really dead forum. But Will made sure it wasn't a dead forum, because he said right afterwards, why don't we have a meme drop? When you know you invite libertarians to post memes, and it's going to be the only thing that would cause more activity is if you said, let's debate abortion. But we could see from this post, Justin, well, comments have been turned off since August 31st. Thank you, Dan. I super appreciate it. So Will turned off the comments. Of course, he started saying, you know, well, Steve, we're going to play the rest of that clip because it gets really juicy. But Will turned off the comments. He turned off the comments to bury the post. And then he asked for a meme dump in order to bury the post. And it isn't like he's even claiming this is innocent. He said he did that on purpose to bury the post. He says he buried the post. He admits it because he didn't want any of the board members to see it. He even says Dale didn't see it. Or he doesn't think Dale did. And Dale told me he didn't, had no idea this was going on. Because I did talk to Dale. Because like I did with New Hampshire, in which I got spanked for by the LNC, I interviewed people before I started jabbering. Okay. Let's go back, play it, the rest.
No, it's not splitting hairs, because if you walk away from the post with comments on and then they get turned off by somebody else, I'm not the one that turned off comments ultimately on that post.
But you were.
But you were colluding with somebody who was turning off the comments, and you were doing the meme dump, and you were aware of the plan, the plot, if you will, to do this. So you're kind of playing dumb here, aren't you? You're kind of making up excuses for. Oh, I didn't. He did it. I told him to, or I didn't tell him to, but we were in communication, and he did it at some point, and it was done. But you did it, and then he did it. What's the difference? I would call that splitting hairs.
Okay. I'll concede that it's splitting hairs.
Ah. This is like the moment when Gilletta Jarvis said to me when I asked her the question and I didn't expect a yes answer. So did you consider that letter from Joe Bishop Henchman a transfer of affiliation? She's like, oh yeah, that's what we both considered it. And I was like, let me clean out my ears because I don't think I heard that right. Oh. Yeah, Will admits he colluded with this guy to do exactly what they did. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan. Okay? Now I hope, let me go back here and we'll just leave this on the screen because it's just so delicious. Some people will disagree with me on this. And I think if you disagree with me on this, you are ethically handicapped. Some people believe that as long as you comply with the black letter of alleged rules, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter if you have dirty hands. It doesn't matter if you use the rules to fuck people over. I think it does. Just like I think David Sexton substituting in for Stephen Nikala was, you know, that sort of thing. Okay? The rules are meant, to me, rules, the whole purpose of rules, and I'll say it, you know what? I'll say it the way David Nolan said it with the membership pledge. Bad people will lie. So, rules have a presumption of good faith. Rules do nothing for people who act in bad faith. And if you allow bad rules to cover for people with bad faith, all you do is victimize good faith actors. And that is an abuse of the rules, not a use of the rules. I do not believe that when you admit or are proven to have acted in bad faith, that you can use the rules to sanitize your bad faith. I would hope every libertarian would agree with me. That is what's called justice. Otherwise, you've just allowed clever people with bad faith in rules books to victimize everybody else. And that's not ethical. That's not just. And I would also say that's not libertarian. You don't act like that. And you can't reward people who act like that by saying, yeah, but they followed the rules. No. Behind every rule is a presumption of good faith. You cannot claim protection of rules when you act in bad faith. Now, I know out there some people disagree with me. And I will never enter into a contract with anybody who disagrees with me on that. It can't be trusted. No amount of rules can cover for bad faith. Your rule book would have to be 1,000,000 pages long to try to cover every contingency if you're going to try to cover every possibility of bad faith.
And the bigger issue in this particular instance was that this decision was made by a 5-member board with the Newcastle County Party with no ability to see what they were doing or participate before it was done.
Okay. What he's saying here, he's trying to claim the Newcastle County Board was anti-vax or something like that. I don't care. But it's funny, is he's complaining about things being done in secret, allegedly. I don't know anything about what he's talking about. Well, they did things in secret. But from what I understand, he's not a member of Newcastle, correct? Doesn't this seem like this is an issue for Newcastle County people to deal with, not him? Or are you being white knight for Newcastle members? It's just all these weird excuses.
And I also have an issue with the way that the organization operates within the LP. Going around taking over state parties, and the goal seems to be primarily focused on getting control of the LNC, getting control of the social media assets of the state and national parties.
Okay. I know that was a bit of a truncated clip. However, this is where I said, this is his out for where he says, it's not about the Mises Caucus, but it's about the Mises Caucus. Well, no, it's not, because I like some Mises Caucus members, but no, I don't like the goals of the National Party. Basically, what he's saying is the equivalent of saying, I don't, and please don't take this, this is just an analogy, okay? People don't understand analogies today, but okay? Disclaimer. But basically what he's saying is the equivalent of, I don't have a problem with people who practice Judaism, as long as they eat pork. So basically he's saying, I don't have a problem with Mises people as long as they don't agree with the Mises Caucus. How convenient. So it is about the Mises Caucus. All caucuses want to, quote unquote, take over. That's the whole purpose. Well, I shouldn't say all caucus. I don't think the Waffle House caucus does. All ideological caucuses want to implement their agenda. Call it whatever you want. And this is an unfortunate consequence of the quote unquote takeover language, which I've said from the beginning, even though I'm on the fucking takeover train now with how badly I got bent over. But what the Mises Caucus means by takeover, let's do a word substitution, because that's all words are. Words are containers for meaning. If you import into that container a meaning that's not intended, you are being dishonest. So all the Mises Caucus means by takeover is go to convention and win elections and get the majority. So let's now do a word substitution. His problem with the Mises Caucus is that they want to go to conventions and win. Isn't that what nearly everyone wants to do, either as a group or individually? So harping on that word is just dishonest. You don't agree with them ideologically, so you think that gives you justification to have a coup of a state party. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It wouldn't have been right if this was minority Mises people doing it to prags. It's not right. You do it the right way. Okay, I think I got one more clip, and then we're going to talk about how I came to my procedural conclusions and what I think the LNC can do about it.
And to my mind, for the 11 years off and on that I've been involved with the party, National doesn't really have a whole lot of impact on our day-to-day.
Absolutely.
It's bad when they post something that embarrasses the rest of us, and then we have to explain it. It's bad when, if they nominate a presidential candidate who does something stupid. But at the end of the day, whether the Mises Caucus controls the LNC or not is not something that concerns me greatly on a day-to-day basis. I don't.
So why?
Obviously it does. Methinks the gentleman doth protest too much. I don't think this is a clip I meant to clip out. I think this is something I meant to put on the scrap floor, but we'll just let it play.
Why does it keep coming up? Like you say, it's not that because these people are Mises Caucus members, you don't have a problem with Mises Caucus members and all that, but these 3 people were removed as Mises Caucus members, 2 of them, for things that it sounds like weren't even all that disruptive. It sounds like it's just Mises Caucus, and I want to know, like, what the big deal is. Because obviously there's some underlying issue that you have.
Wait. That dude on the left, Joe, hasn't blinked. Has he blinked this whole time? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. We'll go. I'm getting weirded out.
The Mises Caucus for it to even get to a point of removing the chair and state chair and appointing yourself.
I didn't appoint myself, but
Has he blinked this whole time? This is a minute-long clip. Hold on. I'm sorry. I just got weird. I want to see how many. I got to see this again.
to my mind, for the 11 years off and on that I've been involved with the party, national doesn't really have a whole lot of impact on our day-to-day.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's bad when they post something that embarrasses the rest of us and then we have to explain it. It's bad when, if they nominate a presidential candidate who does something stupid. But at the end of the day, whether the Mises Caucus controls the LNC or not is not something that
one blink
concerns me greatly on a day-to-day basis. I don't.
So why
that dude doesn't blink? Like, there was one blink in a minute and 10 seconds. The plot thickens. I think we have a lizard person. Did anyone else know? Did he blink? I'm weirded out now. I am really weirded out. Dude, that's a talent. That is a talent. Woof, that was weird. Okay. Blinking aside. Let me go here. Uh-oh, I got my grift back up. Patreon! Patreon and Super Chats. All right, let me get that off. I didn't mean to have that up. I duplicated a scene that I didn't mean to. Okay. Now, let's get into some of the nitty-gritty here. Now, why do I say, I think we all agree that what they did was unethical. Will admits what they did was unethical. So the ethics of the situation are not unquestioned. Both sides admit that it was unethical. So let's now go to why I changed my mind on the procedural issues. And first of all, we're going to deal with the notice of Articles of Association amendment. I do not believe proper notice was given of it for multiple reasons. So let me pull up the thing I had up here before. Okay. This is the alleged notice. It doesn't say notice anywhere. It's not by a board member, and I understand the argument is that board members don't have to make it. I actually disagree. But let's pretend that board members don't have to make it. It doesn't say this is an amendment that's going to be considered. It says change bylaw number 4? ? Even if people had seen this, what about this as a notice? It looks like it's a discussion post. Like, should we change this bylaw number 4? Particularly with it not being by a board member. There's nothing in here that constitutes notice. You notice other times they do notices, it says notice of. Even this same guy. Earlier today, or within the past few days, I went into the LPDE group, and he's done other bylaws notices. And he clearly words them as a notice. This isn't a notice. This is a question. and it's not tagged, but again, there's no requirement in your bylaws that it be tagged. I understand that's your custom. Of course, it was sneaky not to tag it, but this isn't a notice. The purpose of a notice is to notify people. There's no notifying here. It's just a change bylaw number 4, ? It's not a notice. Therefore, 30 days notice wasn't given. End of story. This would be enough. Now, the argument is made, and let me pull up the bylaws. I'm going to pull it up in a different way, though, because I don't want to pull it up by this little overlay. Here they are. Okay, let me share my screen and make it bigger. Let me remove these things. Hold on one sec. Why isn't this working? Okay. How do I remove that one? Right there. Okay. Let me pull this bigger. By the way, you guys, when you get your party back, they didn't change the footer. It says as of April 18th, but it has the changes here that they just made, which are illegitimate, but they didn't change the footer. I wonder if that was on purpose too. I don't know anymore, but you can see that change was made right here, the 2/3, but they didn't change of current as of. Okay. Now, right here, notice. Any one of the following methods shall constitute proper notice. Posting, posting, posting. Okay. Because it doesn't say, you know, Will's argument is it doesn't say it has to be posted by a board member, therefore it can be posted by anybody. I actually think the opposite. This is a responsibility of the board, and therefore for it to be an official notice, I do think it has to be posted by a board member. That's not the strongest argument, but I'm convinced it's correct. This isn't proper notice even if it was allowed to be made by a member, by the way, but I don't think any member can just post a notice. They have no authority to do so. They have no authority to say that the board is going to consider this AOA or bylaws amendment. Only the board, somebody who has the right to make the motion, can do that. So I don't think that was proper notice by the proper person either. Just an FYI. And that's the only thing that's said about notice, and it's talking about notices of pending action. Okay, so let's now go back to me here. So that means we defer to Roberts on notice for other things. So let's talk about notices of meeting. Well, we're going to have to go way back to the beginning of Roberts here. And we're going so far back to the beginning, it's not even numbered pages. It's Roman numerals. One second here. I should have marked these, but I didn't. I'm not a Roman, so it's XLIX, whatever page that is. It says the rules of parliamentary law found in this book will on analysis be seen to be constructed upon a careful balance of the rights of persons or subgroups within an organization's or an assembly's total membership. These rules are based on a regard for the rights of the majority, of the minority, especially a strong minority, greater than 1/3, of individual members, of absentees, and of all these together. Now you notice that one thing on here is protecting the rights of absentees. That is what notice does. It protects the rights of absentees. There is nothing you can do that disenfranchises absentees from having proper notice. So then we go over to 1.7. and it talks about notices of meetings, which is called a call of a meeting. So 1.7 says the call of a meeting is a written notice of its time and place that is sent to all members of the organization, which would mean all members of the board. The board is the organization in this case. A reasonable time in advance. Okay, reasonable is certainly not 5 minutes. And we could argue about whether reasonable is 24 hours. We're going to go to another place that shows reasonable is not 24 hours, but we're only at reasonable right now. So the question became, this meeting where they were considering this improperly noticed bylaws amendment, was this a special meeting or a regular meeting? It makes a difference. So if we go over to Roberts 9.1, the term regular meeting refers to the periodic business meeting of a permanent society, local branch, or board. It says, for which the day should be prescribed by the bylaws, which isn't in y'all's bylaws, and the hour and place fixed by standing rule. The new chair bill called for monthly meetings. And the monthly meeting that was adjourned without any business taking place was on the September 27th. So there's no way that the October 1st thing could be considered the regular meeting. So it is a special meeting. So let's talk about the rules for special meetings. It says a special meeting is a separate session of a society held at a time different from that of any regular meeting. And thank you, Daniel 3. Notice of the time, place, and purpose of the meeting, clearly and specifically describing the subject matter of the motions or items of business to be brought up, must be sent to all members a reasonable number of days in advance. So now we know it's more than 24 hours. So we go over to 9.16 because I know what Will might try to say as well. The alleged notice of bylaws amendment was 30 days beforehand, so the meeting would be 30 days later. Go to 9.16 says, the requirement that business transacted at a special meeting be specified in the call should not be confused with a requirement that previous notice of a motion be given. So those are two separate things. You cannot say that the notice of bylaws amendment constitutes the notice of meeting. I mean, putting aside the fact that it doesn't say the date or time or place. They're two separate things. So there was not proper notice given of this meeting. Now, I know what they'll then turn around and say, well, our bylaws doesn't require any notice of a special meeting. First of all, you can't get rid of a basic right of membership without it being very, very explicit. And I would argue that the right to attend meetings and be notified of them is a basic right that cannot be abridged. But let's pretend it could be. You cannot ambiguously abridge it. So let's look at what they will say. I'm trying to find, let me do a word search because there's a word I'm looking for. Okay, meetings. Meetings of the state board shall be held quarterly and broadcast electronically, blah, blah, blah. In addition, ad hoc, in other words, special meetings may be convened upon the motion and second of any main motion by 2 members of the board and the successful completion of a quorum call. So what they're saying is the minute somebody makes a motion and it's seconded, That is the notice of a meeting. No, it's not. It's the convening of the meeting. It isn't the notice of the meeting. Notice and convening are two separate things. At best, what this is saying is that any member in second calls the meeting to order. It doesn't say that this abrogates notice, because that would abridge a fundamental right without being very, very explicit. And it's ripe for abuse. A temporary majority could just consistently ambush everyone else. And that is not a reasonable interpretation of any bylaw. That is just absolutely crazy. Now, Will told me that the notice was, now let's pull up, and I don't know if I'm going to be able, you guys are going to be able to see this because this is so tiny. I'm going to try to make it big. This is the Discord. Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you some other problems with this too, by the way, but so Will makes the motion. That's not a valid whatever anyway. And Joe seconds it. So really in on the plot here. And then there's this alleged quorum call. Okay, says who's present. And Will then makes a point of order. Not calling the vote is dilatory. Well, nobody refused to call a vote, first of all, but anyway, let's just whatever. Let's just ignore that for a second. So it says Jimmy is the acting chair. Now, you can tell this is orchestrated here because Jimmy says the point of order is not well taken. Well, let's look at point of orders here for a second, shall we? Because he did that improperly as well. 2311 is point of order. 23-1. One second, I gotta find it here. Make a point of order. One second. Okay. Let's just go to 2315. It says, the chair will then rule whether the point of order is well taken or is not well taken, stating briefly his reasons, which are recorded in the minutes. Jimmy did not believe the point of order was not well taken. This was just political theater. And he also didn't state his reason. It's required that he state his reason because that must be included in the minutes, which he did not do. So then Mary appeals the ruling of the chair. She don't even really know what the basis for the ruling is. Brandy seconds, and then they go to a vote. There isn't even debate. So why did Jimmy vote against his own ruling without even any debate? There wasn't anything that could have changed his mind of his original ruling. It's because that original ruling was false. This is political theater. Okay, let's continue. And then they go through this. And then Will immediately says, oh, we should remove whatever. That's not a motion, but okay. And Jimmy says, I agree. That's also whatever. That's their idea of a vote. And, you know, this is where this is all done. Okay. Now, Will is saying, let me move up here, that the notice, let me make sure I have this right. Okay, that the notice of meeting to the absent board members happened right here where he tagged them. So in the space of 1 minute, that's their notice, because they got tagged in a Discord server. That's not notice by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. So procedurally, this was fucked up on every single basis. This is completely invalid. Let me move this. Let me go back to me full screen here. There's one other thing I wanted to look up before I moved on. I should have had these references together, but I was busy pulling clips. So let me just look these up. Y'all talk amongst yourself for 1 second. Okay, that's I'm just a couple things I'm just trying to see here. 1.6 and 2.13. Let me continue. 1 second. Just one other thing I want to look up before we go on. Okay. Okay, you want me to say bylaws too. Let me look at that, because Carter wants me to look at something. Are you saying they cited the incorrect bylaw? Let me, because I didn't even look at that. Okay, let me pull this back up. 1 sec. Okay, you said go back to the beginning. Let me make this bigger. What are you talking about bylaw 2? I'm not sure what you're referring to, so let me pull up the bylaws. Okay, that may in fact be the case, but that's not something I think that would render this fatal. It's an absent chair. You may be technically correct, Carter, but I think that's not, I don't think that matters here, to be honest with you. It was inartfully worded. It would be then that the people present would have to appoint a chair pro tem. I don't get hung up on technicalities that don't ultimately affect how things could have been done. So I would just, I don't think that, me personally don't think that's particularly important. Okay, the other thing I want to deal with here, but while the bylaws are up, there's something else I wanted to show you guys. Okay. I'm looking for the terms of office. I think that's in your AOA. Okay, all members shall be elected an odd number of years for a 2-year term. So you have fixed terms. Now, I've become, unfortunately for me, had to become very intimately familiar with the implications of how your terms of office are defined. So if we go over to the Roberts section on removal of officers. Now, this may not, your bylaws are sloppy. They don't specifically define officers, but it mentions, let me go back to your bylaws 1 second here, because y'all's bylaws are a mess. I think you know that, but let's do a search for the word officer, because it mentions officers. Okay, it mentions you have officers and board members. It never specifically defines officers, but it mentions them. So you do have officers and you have board members, which aren't the same thing. So in the absence of a specific definition, I think it's reasonable to say your officers are your chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. Let me go back here. I needed to go back to that to fill in a gap here. So if you go to Roberts 6216, it talks about removal of officers. And it says, except as the bylaws may provide otherwise. Now, I know Will and 11 members of the LNC say that if the bylaws mention removal at all, that is the bylaws specifying otherwise. No, it isn't. Your bylaws are very similar to national bylaws in that it simply gives the board the authority to remove and the vote threshold. It does not say the procedure. It has to specifically say by motion if it's allowed, if you're allowed to remove officers by a motion. If it doesn't say the procedure, then the procedures in Roberts applies, and it requires a trial. So 62 say that if the bylaws provide that officers serve for a fixed term, which yours does, an officer can be removed from office only for cause. So his thing about where it says removal is not defined, it's incorrect. That is neglect of duty in office or misconduct in accordance with the procedures described in 63. That is, an investigating committee must be appointed, charges must be preferred, and a formal trial must be held. So at least for the chair and vice chair, not for Dave's position, a trial was needed, and a trial was not given. So it also says in 63 then, an officer has the right that allegations against his good name shall not be made except by charges brought on reasonable ground. If thus accused, he has the right to due process, that is, to be informed of the charge and given time to prepare his defense, to appear and defend himself and be fairly treated, which your chair and vice chair were not given. So that is another ground. However, now we're going to get to what can the LNC do. Now, there's a precedent in Oregon that the LNC cannot tell an organization who its officers are. And that would seem to be the case here. But the situation in Oregon was factually distinguishable. There was a situation in Oregon where they couldn't have a convention because they fucked up their bylaws at a convention and made it impossible for them to get quorum at conventions. And they tried to have a convention. And then both sets of people who were claiming to be the legitimate officers each had meetings that were questionable under the existing bylaws and notice. So they both had unclean hands in that circumstance. It was a very big, convoluted mess. In this circumstance, I don't think the LNC is telling people who its officers are, because I don't think they even need to get that far. The convention said who your officers are. And there's no question that you had a valid convention. The question is, have the officers been removed? And I do think that in this particular circumstance, that the LNC doesn't even need to say who the officers are. They can simply say that they've been notified that there was a change due to removal, and that it is apparent that notice was not given, that they could simply take an issue with the notice, because that is such a fundamental right to be given notice. I don't even think they need to get into whether the bylaws amendment was good or bad, whether the bylaws amendment had proper notice, though they could get into that. The reason this becomes important is because who gets to say who gets to say who the delegates are? We're coming up on a convention. The LNC needs to decide who gets to properly designate delegates. Now, that was a problem that also occurred in Oregon, so I do agree here that a reasonable argument can be made that the only option the National Party has is disaffiliation. But I do think this is very, very factually distinguishable from Oregon, in that they only need to deal with the issue of the notice for this one meeting, in which it is clear there isn't facts in dispute here the way there was facts in dispute in Oregon. And the LNC is not telling people who the officers are. The convention already did that. Now, again, I do think reasonable people can disagree. However, I wouldn't disagree. I do think, since the LNC's been asked to look at this, that now they can't force the issue. It's ultimately going to be up to the people in Delaware to handle. But I do think that under just looking at notice, that it is obvious that notice hasn't been taken. And the LNC can refuse to recognize the notice of change of officers because there wasn't a valid change of officers, and just continue to recognize the officers that the convention already recognized. And I do think they need to do that swiftly, because there is a vacancy in the region alternate. Now, the illegitimate board has nominated Steve Sheets. This is no slam on Steve. This has nothing to do with Steve. We could say they nominated Minnie Mouse. It doesn't matter. There needs to be regional elections with a vote by the valid board. It is very critical at this point that the valid board be determined. And I do think the LNC can refuse to recognize, but it ultimately be up to the region when it comes to the issue of the nomination. But because of just the clear, there's no dispute that it was unethical. Even Will McVeigh recognizes that. And I don't think there's any question that there wasn't any notice. And I do think the LNC has a legitimate case to step in here. And I think they should. If they didn't think that they had cause to step in on the notice thing, I think they have no choice but to disaffiliate due to the admitted unethical dirty dealing. Now, the reason why a decision has to be made fairly quickly It's because, again, delegate allocations, and then there's rights to judicial committee appeals and all that sort of thing. Now, if I were the legitimate board, I would immediately hire an attorney. And I would immediately put the bank on notice that an illegitimate board is claiming control of these assets. And I think that might bring things to a head rather quickly. It's a very, very messy, messy situation. But to me, there's absolutely no question who the legitimate board is. And that bylaw amendment did not pass. And disaffiliation would disadvantage the legitimate board. Absolutely, Jess. That's the only authority, though, the LNC has when, if they don't agree on the notice issue, that's the only thing they can do. The bylaw, the national bylaws don't give the national party authority to interfere in the autonomy of an affiliate. But an affiliate is not autonomous to just disregard notice requirements and things like that. That would be like, holding a convention without notifying the members type of thing. But as I said in the beginning of this, inviting the LNC to intervene is like inviting a vampire into your home. Now, the LNC, if it didn't fuck me over, would have had two grounds to deal with the issue of this illegitimate action. But they can't concede that the chair and the vice chair were owed a trial. Because if they concede that, they have to concede that I was owed a trial. So they just fuck themselves with being able to help this affiliate by what they did to me. And that's very unfortunate for Delaware. Because that is one argument that the LNC will not find persuasive, even though they should. Now, however, if I should win my judicial committee appeal based upon due process, then all of a sudden Delaware's got another weapon in its arsenal. But I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't count on that at all. I do think, Jess, that legal action is going to be the only solution with teeth, because the only teeth the National Party has is disaffiliation. But there is, but I do think they have grounds to just simply refuse to recognize the illegitimate board. And then what the illegitimate board can do, because there's precedent for it, is file a judicial committee appeal saying they were the legitimate affiliate and it's been constructive disaffiliation. And maybe that's the best way to go, to let the judicial committee take a look at it. And Little Bird, the people removed have made a statement. I covered it at the beginning of this show. I read their statement out loud. And it also is posted on the Libertarian Party of Delaware group page. I'm not understanding your Pope analogy, just so I can't even speak to that. So I do think there is grounds for the LNC to just say, they don't even have to necessarily take specific action. They just need to continue to recognize the board that as it currently existed at convention. But they need to provide documentation to Bill in order to get their assets back. That is what they need to. They need to actually legitimately provide one of those letters that Joe Bishop Henchman illegitimately provided to Gilletta Jarvis. So that is what I think the LNC can do, is just continue to recognize the board that was elected at convention. In Oregon, neither of the two competing boards were elected at a convention. And that is the big difference. And there was multiple stalled attempts at conventions in Oregon, totally factually distinguishable. The LNC simply needs to recognize the status quo as it existed at convention and provide the appropriate letters to Bill to get their bank account back and to get control of their social media assets. If I were advising Bill, I would say you need to call a meeting to cancel that contract of Will McVeigh and provide notice to all of those board members, because they still are board members. And oh, I see what Jess is saying. I'm ignorant of that situation, so I can't really speak to it. But that's what I think the LNC can do and should do. And then legal action can be taken with, because what happens is that courts are very reluctant to intervene in the internal workings of political parties because it infringes upon freedom of association and all those other things. That's kind of happened. That's what happened in Oregon as well. But that's what I think should happen fairly soon before things get messier. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I know there's a really long way to say my opinion on this situation, but I hope I backed it up and brought receipts the way I tend to. And I would suggest that the legitimate board, chaired by Bill, just continue functioning as a board. And have a meeting and cancel that social media contract. And whatever else they need to do to get themselves back up and running. If things go too far and get too messy, unfortunately, I think disaffiliation is going to happen, and that will be a shame for the members of Delaware. I'm going to answer a question that hasn't been asked yet. What would happen if they were disaffiliated? I can only tell you from the past, the National Party has disaffiliated a party before, and that was the Libertarian Party of Arizona. And what they did then is they sent out a ballot to all of the national members in Arizona, asking them what their desire was, like how they wished to reaffiliate. So I would suggest that I don't know if that is what they would do. And so that the deck isn't stacked, I would suggest to the LNC, and if I was on the LNC still, and I may be back on the LNC, would say that the cutoff date for who as a national member as of, it would be as of the date of that illegitimate action, so that people can't work to stack national memberships now. That to me would be the equitable way. But the facts are not in dispute here, and I think the procedure is clear, and I believe the unethicalness of it is clear. So I've kept you all for 3 hours. No one ever could accuse me of not being thorough or being short-winded. So Thank you very much, Jess and everyone. I hope you have an awesome night, and maybe this made up for the couple nights that I did not have a show. Now, exciting news. Now we're moving a little bit off Delaware. I will continue to give updates, and I will continue to remain on friendly discussions with everyone who will have a friendly discussion with me. And if Joe DiBasquale wants to talk with me, I'd be more than willing to talk with him, because I was a little harsh on him in this video. And I think he's new and does not realize really what a mess he's stepping into. So, exciting news. Yeah, that's why I said, Little Bird said the LNC has been shady. They certainly have. And that's why I said it's like inviting a vampire into your house. Be careful what you wish for. You know? I will continue to do everything I can in the position I have now, which is Secretary in Exile, to help. And you guys pretty much know my position. If I end up back on the LNC, what my position is going to be. That all depends upon my appeal. Do not count on me winning my appeal. It's very difficult to win a Judicial Committee appeal. So exciting news for me for tomorrow is I go on the radio tomorrow, 1360 KHNC in Weld County. So move to sequester. Okay. I wonder what's that about, Carter? Let me put this up here on the screen. So are they doing that to protect themselves? I don't think that protects them, because if they receive funds after 10/1 under false pretenses, that's bad. That's bad too. I mean, it's good that they're doing the sequester, and perhaps they received a request from the LNC to do that. The LNC should not be discussing this in private, by the way, but okay, well, that's interesting. Please keep me updated, everyone. So, yeah, I'm going on the air tomorrow. And, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to keep this longer than it is. I got a lot to talk about with that, but it's late. And you guys have been very, very patient to be learning about what's going on. And I'm very pleased that so many people are interested in what's going on in another affiliate and being interested in what's going on with the party. I would urge you to write the LNC and urge them to take some kind of action. Whether you agree with what I said or you have ideas of your own, please do urge them to take some action to get this resolved quickly. All right, everyone. I hope you have an awesome night. I'm going to be preparing for my show, and I thank you so, so much. I hope all of this unpleasantness ends quickly. And to the legitimate board in Delaware, I'm really, really sorry you're going through this. You did nothing wrong. Have a good night. And thank you. Thank you so much for the super chat, Stephen. Bye-bye, everyone.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business.